This is the DAR Today Podcast, and I'm your host, Brooke Bullmaster Stewart. Well, it's August, as you know, and we are continuing with our favorites series of segments. Today is a replay of the story of our dazzling daughter, Dr. Mary Walker. Last week, we told you a little bit of backstory about that segment and the development of it. And for this one, this was a neat collaboration between Chris Hertzleffler and Sherry Stein and myself. And we really, again, we had this idea of talking and mentioning Dr. Mary Walker as one of our DAR members who did amazing things. And as we were reading this story, we started realizing, I bet there's just so much more to this that we haven't delved into yet. And so we started delving and diving, and it was amazing, the information that we could end up finding about her. And so that is what this segment reflects. And we really hope that you will love hearing or watching the story about her as much as we enjoyed creating this and learning all of this about this incredible woman, this dazzling daughter. And we do hope again that you will like and subscribe to this podcast wherever it is you watch or listen to it. And thank you so much for being here with us. On a summer day in 1866, Mary Edwards Walker exited a milliner's store on Canal Street in New York and was promptly arrested. A report the following day stated, "The lady wore a long coat or robe and a pair of cloth pants, and the guardian of the public peace, imagining that there was something wrong about this and that a lady ought not be allowed to dress as she pleases, undertook to arrest her." But, entire truth be told, it wasn't just Patrol Officer Patrick Pickett who was concerned. Other female customers in the store were also taken aback by her attire. Walker was arrested for impersonating a man, an offense that purportedly caused public excitement, was classified as a misdemeanor, punishable by fine and, if repeated, incarceration. But by 1866, Walker was known for much more than causing a stir with her attire. She was an abolitionist, prohibitionist, surgeon, and as of 1865, the only female Medal of Honor recipient. So how about taking a guess at a dazzling daughter chosen to appear on a coin? The American Women Quarters Program is a 4-year program celebrating the accomplishments and contributions made by exemplary women of the United States. In 2024, the U.S. Mint will release a quarter honoring fellow DAR daughter Dr. Mary Edwards Walker. She's a sparkling example of a woman who defied the expectations of her time, a woman who truly made history. Let's take a richer look at Dr. Walker's life. Born in Oswego, New York, February 26, 1832, Mary and her 6 brothers and sisters were raised by progressive but devout Christian parents, Alva and Vest Whitcomb Walker. Tasked with helping on the farm, Mary often wore trousers and shirts because they were more comfortable. The family was anti-alcohol, anti-tobacco, and her father believed wearing corsets was damaging to one's health. In a late 1890s interview with the Syracuse Standard, she told a reporter that she was, quote, "the original new woman," end quote. And when dress reform for women was begun in the early 1840s by the likes of Lucy Stone, Mrs. Bloomer, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Susan B. Anthony, she was, as she said, already wearing pants. Hers was a family of freethinkers that also emphasized the importance of education for girls. Her parents created the first free school in Oswego, New York, in order that their daughters received an education equal to their sons. Mary carried her nonconformist attitude with her throughout her entire life. Upon completing their education at their parents' school, Mary and 2 of her older sisters then graduated from Bailey Seminary in Fulton, New York. She took a job as a teacher, but realized her true calling was medicine and saved her income for medical school. In 1855, Mary Walker graduated with honors from Syracuse Medical College, the only woman in her class and only the second woman in the country with a medical degree. She was 23 years old. 1 year later, she married fellow medical student Albert Miller. The two opened a practice, but neither it nor their marriage would ultimately be successful, so she set them both aside in 1859. When the Civil War broke out, Walker was 28 years old, and for 4 years she treated both wounded soldiers and injured civilians, and by special approval from Congress, she adopted male attire. The New York Tribune wrote of her in December 1862, and I quote, "Dressed in male habiliments, with the exception of a girlish-looking straw hat, decked off with an ostrich feather, a petite figure and feminine features. She carries herself amid the camp with a jaunty air of dignity, well calculated to receive the sincere respect of the soldiers. She can amputate a limb with the skill of an old surgeon, and administer medicine equally as well. Strange to say that, although she has frequently applied for a permanent position in the medical corps, she has never been formally assigned to any particular duty." End quote. But that changed in 1864 as Walker was assigned a position as acting assistant surgeon to the 53rd Ohio Volunteers, an appointment that the director of the medical staff called a medical monstrosity. In April of 1864, she became a prisoner of the Confederacy and was taken to Castle Thunder Prison in Richmond, Virginia. She was released in a prisoner exchange in August of the same year and traded for a male Confederate surgeon. She became the first woman officer ever exchanged as a prisoner of war for a man of the same rank, an event she considered affirmation of her worth. She spent the next 6 months in the Union's Louisville Female Military Prison, serving as an acting assistant surgeon. She found this role difficult not for the task, but due to male co-workers continually undermining her authority by encouraging prisoners to refuse treatment and medication from her. Upon leaving service for the government in 1865, she continued to dress as she pleased, embracing the comfort of pants, and the remainder of her life was spent fighting for, as you would guess, women's dress reform and women's right to political suffrage. In November of 1865, Dr. Walker was awarded the Medal of Honor by President Andrew Johnson for her numerous acts of heroism and bravery. Her citation was as follows, and I quote, "Whereas it appears from official reports that Dr. Mary E. Walker, a graduate of medicine, has rendered valuable service to the government, and her efforts have been earnest and untiring in a variety of ways, and that she was assigned to duty and served as an assistant surgeon in charge of female prisoners at Louisville, Kentucky, upon the recommendation of Majors General Sherman and Thomas, and faithfully served as contract surgeon in the service of the United States, and has devoted herself with much patriotic zeal to the sick and wounded soldiers, both in the field and hospitals, to the detriment of her own health, and has also endured hardships as a prisoner of war 4 months in a Southern prison while acting as contract surgeon. And whereas, by reason of her not being a commissioned officer in the military service, a brevet or honorary rank cannot, under existing laws, be conferred upon her. And whereas, in the opinion of the President, an honorable recognition of her services and sufferings should be made, it is ordered that a testimonial thereof shall be hereby made and given to the said Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, and that the usual Medal of Honor for meritorious service be given her." End quote. However, this honor was not to stand. Walker's medal was rescinded in 1917, 2 years before she died, along with 910 other Medal of Honor recipients due to their status as civilians and not commissioned officers during the war, even though they served on the battlefield. Well, Dr. Walker refused to return the medal and continued to wear it until she died 2 years later. According to one legend, when federal marshals attempted to retrieve it in 1917, she opened the door holding a shotgun and wearing her medal. Walker was an ardent suffragist. However, unlike others, she argued that women were already entitled to vote. From her perspective, the phrase, "we the people," is not gender-specific. Therefore, there was no need to enshrine in the Constitution a right already granted. Walker made an unsuccessful bid for the U.S. Senate in 1881 and an unsuccessful attempt as a Democratic candidate for a seat in Congress in 1890. Dr. Walker's attire continued to be a source of ridicule her entire life. In 1914, she was introduced as a novelty. Cartoon caricatures and hoax invitations made light of the equality she desperately sought. But despite the mocking that she endured, she never lost her love of country. "When buried beneath the ground, wrap that flag my corpse around, plant that flag above my grave, then let it wave, she wrote before she died. Women gained the right to vote 1 year after her death. Walker's health began to fail after a fall on the steps of the United States Capitol building in D.C. in 1917. She went home to Oswego and passed at the home of her neighbor on February 21, 1919, at the age of 86. Her funeral arrangements had been finalized by her nearly 15 years prior, including the making of a pre-post-mortem photograph of Mary in a casket surrounded by flowers. She swore that was going to be a trend that caught on. 1977 saw President Jimmy Carter restore the legitimacy to Walker's medal thanks to tireless efforts made by her family, stating that her acts of distinguished gallantry, self-sacrifice, patriotism, dedication, and unflinching loyalty to her country, despite the apparent discrimination because of her sex, warranted the award. To date, Dr. Walker remains the only woman to have been awarded the Medal of Honor, and the Mary Walker stamp was issued on June 10, 1982, in commemoration of her receipt of the Medal of Honor. In 2012, a 900-pound bronze statue honoring Walker was installed in front of the Oswego Town Hall. And now the sparkling Dr. Walker will receive 2 more honors by the U.S. government. In addition to being honored on a coin, a military fort will also be renamed in her honor. The design of Dr. Walker's quarter will be unveiled in spring or early summer of 2023, with quarters available in 2024. I can't wait to get mine so that I will be continually reminded of this extraordinary woman, Dr. Mary Edwards Walker.